The Tiananmen Square tragedy. What actually occurred in Tiananmen Square in 1989 remains a subject of significant interest and concern. More than 3 decades have passed since the incident, during which numerous unarmed pro-democracy demonstrators were tragically killed, possibly numbering in the hundreds or even thousands, in Beijing. Additionally, tens of thousands of protesters in various Chinese cities were arrested during this period. The individuals at Tiananmen Square, situated in the heart of Beijing, were advocating for political and economic reform through peaceful means. However, the Chinese authorities chose to respond with an immense show of force, using drastic measures to suppress the demonstrations. The Tiananmen Massacre in 1989 saw the deployment of military units, resulting in the mass killing of unarmed protesters and bystanders. To this day, the Chinese government has never acknowledged the true events of that tragic incident, and discussing the protest remains a contentious and censored topic within China. The Chinese authorities are actively attempting to erase the memory of the hundreds, if not thousands, of unarmed pro-democracy protesters killed in Tiananmen Square in 1989. However, there are individuals, like human rights lawyer and activist Chao Hang-tung, who refuse to forget the events of Tiananmen Square. For years, Chao Hang-tung has been instrumental in organizing peaceful annual commemorations of the crackdown. In 2021, she faced unjust imprisonment in Hong Kong after using social media to encourage people to light candles at home in remembrance of the tragic incident. The iconic photograph from Tiananmen Square, widely known as Tank Man, has become a symbol of the 1989 protests in Western media. On June 5, 1989, this remarkable image depicted a lone man in a white shirt carrying shopping bags, fearlessly confronting a column of imposing military tanks dispatched by the government to disperse the demonstrators. Despite the man's identity remaining unconfirmed, his courageous act has left a lasting impression. Tank Man stood his ground and successfully prevented the military vehicles from passing. Eventually, concerned onlookers pulled him away from harm's way. Nevertheless, the powerful image of an unarmed individual standing against the might of tanks became an enduring representation of the Tiananmen protesters' struggle, a peaceful protest met with overwhelming military force. The photographer behind this momentous picture is Stuart Franklin, who captured the Tank Man photograph. In April 1989, individuals from all over China assembled in Tiananmen Square in Beijing to grieve the passing of Hu Yaobang, a liberal leader within the Communist Party, and to express their frustrations concerning the sluggish progress of promised reforms. What began as a gathering soon transformed into peaceful protests that extended throughout various Chinese provinces. The demonstrators, primarily comprised of students, demanded an end to official corruption and sought political and economic reform. The number of participants in these protests was estimated to reach 1 million individuals taking to the streets in Beijing. On May 13, hundreds of student protesters in Tiananmen Square initiated a hunger strike to push for talks with the Communist Party leaders, further garnering support from the public. In response, party leaders visited the student protests on May 19, leading the demonstrators to end their hunger strike that evening. However, the government's reply was to declare martial law in Beijing on the following day, aiming to firmly stop the unrest. Despite this declaration, in the subsequent weeks, hundreds of thousands of people persisted in voicing their grievances through demonstrations on the streets of Beijing, while similar protests unfolded in various cities across China. During the night of June 3 to June 4, the government dispatched tens of thousands of armed troops and hundreds of armored military vehicles to the city center to impose martial law and forcibly disperse the demonstrators, aiming to restore order in the capital. As the troops approached the demonstrations, they resorted to opening fire on both protesters and onlookers without any prior warning. John Gittings, reporting for The Guardian, recounted the grim scenes, with casualties being rushed away, including a girl with a battered and bloody face, and a youth with severe chest injuries. Amidst the chaos, the firing into the crowds continued, causing some to be shot in the back as they attempted to flee, while others tragically lost their lives due to being crushed by military vehicles. The precise death toll from the events at Tiananmen Square that night remains unknown. Eyewitness testimonies from protesters shed light on the aftermath, revealing that wounded individuals were being carried on stretchers down Tiananmen Square. Soldiers were seen putting people into large plastic bags, and there were reports of around 200 young people being surrounded and mistreated by soldiers. Disturbingly, In early July, it was learned from public security sources that all of these individuals were allegedly executed on June 9 in a rural district near Beijing. The group included students and residents of Beijing. In the aftermath of the military crackdown, the Chinese authorities immediately launched a sweeping campaign to apprehend those involved in the demonstrations. Thousands of people were detained, subjected to torture, imprisoned, or executed following unfair trials, with charges of counter-revolutionary crimes. Since the June 1989 crackdown, the Chinese authorities have intentionally concealed the total number of individuals who were detained, tried, or executed throughout the country. In the atmosphere of fear and terror that prevailed after the crackdown, the bereaved relatives of those killed not only found it impossible to seek justice for their losses, but they were also prohibited from openly mourning the deceased, who were officially branded as rioters. Tiananmen Square and the events of the 1989 crackdown continue to be considered a forbidden subject within China. The topic remains strictly taboo, and there is no official death toll disclosed. Any attempts to discuss, commemorate, or seek justice for what occurred have been met with forceful suppression, with no room for public dialogue. Since 1989, numerous people have faced imprisonment for remembering the events or questioning the official narrative, with human rights lawyer and activist Chow Hang-tung being one of those unjustly arrested in Hong Kong. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.